We are now building a SaaS for marketing lifetime value. And if you are looking, for example, the end user, if you have e-commerce shop, they don't always understand what you are getting out of the data. So also there's another problem. How do you sell your data and explain it to your customer in the easy way?
I think this North Star metric, that's a dangerous thing because you focus only on one thing and there are so many things you can miss. It's unbelievable. I would be very careful about this.
It's more than just buying a license for Looker and dumping all your data into one big data lake or whatever the buzzword today is. It's more than just hiring an overpriced consultant and buying a tool.
Hello.
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 Today we would like to talk about something that everybody is talking about. And to be honest, I think very few people are doing. And this has nothing to do with dirty business, but that's data-driven approach.
Michael, what is data-driven approach?
To be honest, all my life, I was thinking that data-driven is something super complex. But to be honest, this is just the data that you can produce, gather, put into some kind of a structure that you can later on use to simply control, develop, move your business, your company. And this sounds very easy. And this is why everybody is talking about it, that, yeah, you should have this data generated by your company and you could use it for strategic moves and for controlling everything. Yes, it's true. But then when I work with so many customers, very few of them actually have this implemented properly. And new ones somehow get discouraged. At least that was something what I observed. How does it look like in your case?
Depends. It can be simple. It can be overcomplicated. And who's working with it, and if they want to work with it, also it depends. I can see that, for example, smaller businesses, they're like, no, we don't need it, it's overcomplicated and so on. And the bigger mid-size and bigger companies, they almost always do it. But they not always do something with this data which they gather as well. So I know some examples where we collect a lot of data, but we do nothing about of this. And we don't really change our decision based on this.
This about collecting data, and not doing anything with it. That's one of the biggest sins I have seen. That people actually, collect, never use it for anything. Yes, Jarek?
I can only agree. We build a tool for collecting data and extracting value from it. And out of multiple dashboards that we offer, consistently we see how users underuse the tool by focusing on just small slice of data. So I have a front row seat in how data is collected and actually not looked at. We couldn't be close to the truth with that.
This is so funny because both of you just named the two biggest sins, which I have for the data-driven methodology, which I'm observing among the wild. And the first one is, of course, gathering data which is not being used for anything. And the second one is, of course, as you said, Jarek here, focusing on the wrong thing, yes? Thinking that the bit you have, you struck gold, or simply, yes, looking in a completely wrong direction. Yes?
And I would add one more extra sin, if you are collecting those, is collecting, well, not say collecting, but not cleaning your inputs or filtering the inputs, putting it in the right context. So first you get the rubbish data, then you look at then you underuse whatever you collected, and then you look at the wrong things. So 3 different buckets of mischiefs when it comes to data-driven.
That's true, but that's a very important question now to Paulina, because she's obviously the biggest DevOps challenger here. What do you get, Paulina, in DevOps? The best data-driven approach is when you are not just monitoring, for example, the servers and infrastructure, yes? That's when you start correlating the data with your business inputs. Isn't that true?
I think that's a mix because you can also produce too many data, which you need to be also selective of which data you look into in the right way, or when do you inform that this data, particular data, is important for the developer or manager or whoever is your end user or target audience for it. And but you also want to be able to collect the data between environment servers depending on what you're running on. And for example, you have drift detection, which I see very often. We do the drift detection, we have data for it, we don't check it, or we inform everyone about it, so no one does anything about it. So lack of ownership also of the data which we produce, I think that's also one of the very common mistake we can see.
But correlation between, like, for example, the health state of infrastructure and the number of bookings. Let's say it's a company that does bookings. Yes, that's a very interesting correlation, because obviously if something is failing, potentially if something is failing the infrastructure, the bookings will also go down. Yes, because suddenly people cannot book or something like that. How often can you see that?
Performance and data around this, but usually you have some automation around, at least, especially on if you run in Kubernetes or if you run in cloud, you have almost always auto scaling and some threshold, so it automatically is supposed to act on whatever is going on in the system. So you have to have very big mismatch to being able to get it to the team before it actually can handle it by itself, kind of, but whatever is in the system.
I think we jumped over a step too far with this conversation. So we are talking about correlation, about the data. This is a outcome of one of the sins that we just started talking about. So let's maybe step back and talk about the basics. We talked about inputs. We talked about not looking at the data, and then the last one was actually looking at the wrong data. Mike, from your point of view, what problems have you seen, and what kind of solutions can you kind of highlight when it comes to the first problem, the data input, the filtering, the collection?
The way I was usually doing it is that I was always collecting data and making sure that the data is not collected modified, if that was a reasonable amount. Yes, because obviously if the amount is horribly huge, then you don't want to waste so much space. Yes, and then I was doing transformations to the data before presenting it. And very often the pattern which I'm implementing is the so-called data hub pattern. That means that I have one central software package which has own database, and to that place I'm actually collecting data, usually from different places, and putting it into one database in one well-known format. And usually I do some transformations and cleanup. And very important thing, also error detection, because I have one customer that has a huge solution. I mean, the data hub is not that big, but they have a lot of data. And suddenly things like, these accounts were just duplicated, yes? Or suddenly there comes double turnover from some of the inputs and so on. These things, they actually happen. And that's not because I did something wrong. That's simply because one of the machineries somewhere, a few 100 kilometers from here, started just spitting double data. Things just happen.
And you, Paulina?
And what was the question?
When it comes to the first problem space, when we talk about data collection and filtering and effectively cleaning it, how does it look from your perspective? What's your experience?
I think the cleaning it is one of the biggest issue because people don't really care about their data, so they put way too much stuff into it and they don't take care of quality of it. So you cannot really say that whatever your outcome you're getting out of it, is it actually true or not, if you're not taking care of your data as for production environment. So the same as you go to with your infrastructure, you should go with your data quality as well.
It's interesting because I have a slightly different angle on this. My angle is we would love to collect all the data, but our goal is to actually clean it from personal data. You talk about collecting raw data, Michael, to keep it for future transformation, and that would be great, but sometimes you just can't, right?
Yeah, that's the problem.
You have to make sure that what you collect is already cleansed and purged from things that are identifiable, unless you have a consent. Even then, there are some caveats. And then making sure that what you collected is raw enough to give you future transformation value. At the same time, it's without things that expose you, create liability in terms of compliance and regulators. So it sounds like we all have slightly different perspective on data collection, and we focus on, well, our talking points focus on different things.
And I think this is what is making the whole discussion about data-driven approach so confusing, because basically if you look on every entrepreneur that has a slightly bigger business, yes, we are talking about 5+ workers, employees, they focus on some of the target metrics. Let's say it's bookings, or let's say it's sold items, whatever it is, but they all are slaves to turnover. Yes, that's number one, and of course it's the most important one. Yes, what's the turnover, how much money we're making, and so on. Are we losing money? This is very important. But I have a feeling that this data-driven approach, usually that's the only metrics they are actually using. Yes, and everything around it has some kind of a function, but it's not really doing anything. And I have a feeling that if you would like to move your company further, if you'd like to change things, optimize something, and kind of like get rid of some of the costs, for example, yes, the data which is around these well-known metrics, that's the key to make things better. And as we all mentioned now, this is so confusing, yes, because depending on what you're monitoring, it's a mess every single time. And I think that's why Google is so rich, yes, because they took so much of unstructured data and put some meaning to it, yes?
Yeah, I think we are not really discovering proverbial America here. The space of process mining, to give one example, where you build and optimize your business processes based on logged activities, data, and whatnot, has been researched for years now, right? There are academic studies and books on the subject. The usual conclusion is the quality of data and the way you approach the transformation and cleaning and then extracting value from transformation is the key. But I think that the common theme in all of those conversations is that people, from my experience, so maybe a question for you as well, because from my experience, conversations usually focus around what tool should we use, rather than how to get data, how to clean the data, what algorithms to apply to the data, and then how to present based on stakeholder needs, rather than, oh, should we go with Looker? Should we go with Snowflake? And so on, or whatever tool you might use in your domain. So what is your experience when it comes to value add versus tool and technical conversations?
Can I add something which is not tool related, but will greatly set the background here?
Go on.
Usually the metrics I'm building, they are like mostly business related, yes? Where I'm trying to put the tech part to support the business decision-making process. But what I noticed, and happens very often, that when I build preliminary dashboards and present the data, very often people don't know what kind of conclusions they can draw from it. So basically having the tool, having the data even ordered by someone, very often people cannot really draw conclusions from it. And this is not because they are stupid. It's because this is actually difficult. But when it comes to tools, if I can just quickly answer, I actually use 2 tools. One of them doesn't have a brand because that's the data hub you have to code yourself. That's my gathering point of everything. Yes, that's my connector to everything. And then I'm just using Metabase. This is a open source free alternative to actually making great graphs and so on. And to be honest, this is working brilliantly. And I'm not talking about
your company or your customers.
Actually, my customers, they have their own Metabase instances, and you can run them on premise. Yes, so this is not the problem. And I'm talking about this more business related monitoring. Yes, because when we talk about things like, for example, DevOps monitoring, yes, where you have log data parsing and so on, this is a completely different set of tools. But I will give you, Jarek, this. The number of tools there, it's ridiculous. But what kind of tools? Yeah,
You have
Paulina,
been
what kind of tools?
awfully quiet.
Yes, but also tell us what kind of tools you're mostly working with, yes?
I think on one side depends, whatever customer has. Every bigger company, usually they already have tools and you don't want to introduce anything new if you can reuse. So sometimes it's something what is native to the cloud provider. Sometimes it can be external, like you have Elk Stack, you have Datadog. I think that's two most common ones. But also it can be different if someone, for example, builds the data platform or like Port.io or for example. So it depends. Sometimes they have, something coded on their own as well, depending what the needs is, the need for logs and how much. What are the requirements? Is it only for infrastructure or is it not infrastructure related, or is it more like platform approach, but not only for infrastructure? So it might be, again, depending what your requirements are, there might be different tools. You have Airbyte as well, so it depends.
Yeah, it's interesting, Michael and Paulina, what you were talking about. We are talking, your focus, at least in this conversation, goes towards data monitoring and dashboards. And this is a way of looking at data. My product is doing exactly that, building dashboards on the collected data. But there is also another aspect to the data-driven, in my definition point of view, where you use collected data, logs, metrics to expose business deficiencies, to expose better way of doing business or technology. Like, it doesn't have to be business specific, where you discover those things which effectively are waste and are optimization practices. So I think there is a data-driven, the passive approach. It doesn't mean bad. It's passive in the sense of looking at the data collected and analyzing them on dashboards. And there is a more proactive one where you shift the business processes based on activity, on the common paths, on errors, that, as you mentioned, Michael, where you effectively can restructure the business operations or technical operations based on the data you have, which is I believe is a good segue to, you are sitting on the data. How are you using that, right? Are you actually using the data you already collected? You pay for the service, you pay for the storage. Are you making the best use of the resources you already spend on?
But this is a general problem. I mean, even though if you have dashboards and graphs and colorful tables and so on, yes, and you look on historical data, this is a source of a lot of answers to how to restructure your business, how to optimize things. And 99% of people don't do this, yes? The ones that I know that do this, they actually implemented full data-driven processes, and it took them some time to get to this data proficiency so that they are able themselves also do what you're talking about, anticipate some problems.
I think one thing which was not mentioned was security. So also from at least technical point of view, it's important to look into your data and say, okay, do I have everything updated? Are there any errors? Is something failing? Are we not scaling? What is performance? And security part of it. So I think, or did anyone get to your system and they mining Bitcoin or other stuff? So that stuff which you can see, or for example, is your database overloaded because, I don't know, one of the modules of your system is putting too much pressure on it and database, it's not auto-scaling or something. So
in your work, Paulina, because I think out of all of us, you're the most security focused in your work. Have you seen a use case, an example where data was used to discover an active threat or an active vulnerability in the business?
yes.
Can
That
you share
happened
some
also.
details or
No.
is it confidential? Okay.
I cannot give
I can tell you
example.
that happened. I can
But
disclose.
yes.
I can disclose actually one. It happened, and that was very interesting because suddenly all the CPUs, the usage went 100%. That was weird that all of the machines suddenly got 100%. Yes, but that's when you figure out that yes, they start mining bitcoins. Yes, it was a 0 day. It happened just before the whole GDPR thing kicked in, and yeah, things like that happen. But notice one thing in our discussion, yes? We have been talking about data-driven, that it's hard to implement and so on, because I get a lot of people sometimes that I talk to, they get discouraged when they figure out that doing this data-driven thing, this is not just one afternoon, yes? This is not just a few hours to pop up the metabase, buy a product, set it up, oh, it's going to be fantastic. No, it's usually a much longer process, because discovering the data that really works for you, this is not easy. But look, the mess we created, us three, we have 3 engineers here gathered, and everyone is actually chipping in a very valuable part of the data-driven process. Paulina, security. Remember also about the servers. Jarek, hey, the data that you actually collect, clean it up, process it properly, make sure it's ready for future transformations, yes? Use it also for proactive things when it comes to your business. I'm bloody focused on the business part of it, yes? How to get data, find new correlations, optimize somehow the shop that you're running, yes? This is actually huge. And I'm not surprised that business owners, they can't do it.
Yeah, it's more than just buying a license for Looker and dumping all your data into one big data lake or whatever the buzzword today is. It's more than just hiring an overpriced consultant and buying a tool. It's about all the steps of the process along the way. And it cannot be done with the significant involvement of stakeholders, whether it's your tech side, whether it's your business, ideally both combined, and making use of the data you're sitting on. What was it? In the late 2000s, people started understanding the data is the new gold, right? That it's no longer about data is an asset. Data is the asset. So we started hoarding the data, but very few actually started using the data.
Or not automating the data collection. That's also some big thing I've seen. That they, for example, in my first job when I got into it, they were manually checking all the servers if they're up, or all the pipelines if they're green or not. When you have very easy tools with few scripts, you can be very easy automate it. And they pay people for doing it twice a day and sending the report to being able. So I think also getting your process too long, that also can be an issue.
Yeah. There's no excuse not to have a Grafana dashboard and alerting with, is your service up and or not? There are some, I think you're touching on a good point. Like there are some basics that you have to do no matter whether you are data driven or not. That simply, there's no excuse for doing what today we could consider bare minimum.
Yeah, that level actually got pushed much, much higher. But to wrap it up somehow, yes? The whole data-driven approach, it's messy, it's very difficult, and it's very custom depending on the business, because this is not like buying a pair of shoes. Can you answer me this question? Is it enough to find some kind of a data-driven strategy? Is it enough to just write down the questions that you would like to have answered before you start doing the data-driven? It's a tricky one.
I sense you're leading us to answer yes, but I would say no. I would say no. And
wait, don't explain what's Paulina's meaning, and then we're gonna explain it.
I think it's a good start, but it doesn't cover everything.
I expected that kind of answer, so provide me with your explanations, and then I will share mine.
You start. Okay, well, you can go, I can go, but you complain and talked a lot. I believe that if you come with preemptive questions, you'll steer conversation towards those questions and those answers, and that might be a good approach, but it's going to create blind spots. So here I'm a bit conflicted, because as a vendor of a tool, we offer an opinionated view of your data. But at the same time, we don't pretend to have all the answers. We have a set of answers for a specific set of stakeholders. And I think we're doing a good job for this very specialized group of stakeholders, and that's fine. But if you're a business and you're looking at your operations holistically, whether it's IT operations, whether this is your finance, whether it is your lead generation, whatever you're looking at, every single part of your business will have their own questions, they have own problems, and they will have their own blind spots. So here's what I would say: a tool fetish is a warranted one by giving people tools flexible enough. You can help them explore things they might not simply be aware that the question exists. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But is it worth it? I would say, well, it depends how much value you put in growing your business. That's my very long answer.
Michal, go. There is a trash car behind the window.
It's okay. Okay. Well, having the questions written down helps, but Jarek, you just basically hit exactly the bullseye that, yeah, this will actually bias you towards possibly false solution and to blind spots. Because what I noticed very often is that once you visualize a lot of source data, then you discover also new correlations. You discover new ways on how they affect each other, yes? And very often not just writing the questions that you like to have the answers, but also writing the processes, the outcomes, like declarative ways. What would you like to achieve in your company? And then you start searching in that big data bucket. It basically looks like you take a big box of Lego, you dump it on the floor, and then you look for the parts to build what you actually want to achieve. And this is what makes it super valuable, but also makes the process damn long. And which is daunting, which is discouraging people, yes? Which then makes them think that this data-driven thing, it's this consultant scam. They just come, bill hours, and
Also, one point to add, I think they don't always understand what data do they want or what can come out of the data if you put someone specialized in particular niche. I mean, we are now building a SaaS for marketing lifetime value. And if we are looking, for example, the end user, if you have e-commerce shop, they don't always understand what you are getting out of the data. So also there's another problem. How do you sell your data and explain it to your customer in the easy way? Doesn't matter if it's internally in the company or it can be, or you are putting it into SaaS solution or something like this, when your customer can come by, connect the sources and get the data transformed in a particular way. They also need to be able to understand whatever they're getting out of there, being able to put and apply and do something about it.
Yeah, and I think your example, Paulina, is really good with the lifetime value. When you try to estimate it and calculate it, that's the place where missed input will cost you greatly down the line, right? If you missed one of the inputs to the value equation, then everything falls apart.
So basically, to sum it up, data-driven approach, extremely valuable, but not something you can do in one afternoon. And definitely something I would recommend. But if you are the business owner that is about to do this, make sure, I can see some accidents happening here. If you would like to do this, be prepared that it's going to take time. So this is not a project which can be just topped with a few hours of consulting work. And I would definitely recommend getting someone external that has the knowledge, has the skills, has the experience.
Before we wrap it up, a question for all of you. What is the end of data driven? What is your there is no end to data driven practices. What I mean, like, what is your end goal by implementing a functional, working, properly designed, data driven practices in the business? What's your end goal?
Usually I observe two effects. The first one is expansion of the business. That means turnover goes up, so they start investing even more. And the second one is they fix the problems in the processes which they defined earlier as broken. So simple.
I think there's one more. You want to be able to keep your current customers happy by having stabilized system or stabilized processes, as I think Michal mentioned, for your also existing customers.
Interesting. these are really good answers, obviously, and perfectly valid. When I asked this question, I had slightly different angle in my head, but which is also an interesting way of how we frame the question affects the outcome of the conversation. What I was thinking about is, in context of actually data itself, what I observe is a lot of businesses focus on how can we frame our performance behind a single metric. So I think a few years ago there was a big craze of calling it our North Star metric. What makes which number would describe our business going up or down compared to competition or compared to whatever happens in the market.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, of course.
Isn't that the metric which I mentioned in the very beginning, that most of the business people, they just follow the turnover thing?
No, I mean, I heard different. What let me just say, it depends on where you sit, right? If you are so for example, when you talk with investment banking teams implementing certain things, they will focus like our North Star metric is electronic trade latency. That's our North Star metric, because in their landscape, this is what they care about. Yes, it eventually translates to what you just described, but at a certain lens, when you look at the data, your metric is this. Then if you work with SaaS, they might say, oh, our metric is rule of 40. They will focus on the, are we up or below 40%? And it's kind of symptomatic of the data-driven approach is so vague in a way, because it's so subjective depending with whom you talk, right? If you talk with the C-level, what you just described, Michael, is probably the spot on, right? But when you start drilling down, every one of us will have different goal for the data-driven practices.
Before I give voice to Paulina, just one. I think this North Star metric, that's a dangerous thing, because you focus only on one thing, and there are so many things you can miss. It's unbelievable. I would be very careful about this. I mean, let's say you have a number of bookings, yes, but then how many cancellations? I mean, if that's, and I think these numbers can be even more convoluted.
I think it depends. Like, for example, let's say you want to have your system up. That's something you want to have, as high percentage as possible. And only if this is covered, you want to look further kind of for performance, for example, because if your system is down, you don't care about performance of your infrastructure. So I think there is a priority within what you should look into. That's my opinion in most of the cases.
This is a gold mine of problems.
I didn't say it's easy, but I do see different stakeholders having their own way of looking at data, and maybe it's just a knee-jerk reaction to us being overwhelmed with data. Maybe we have too much data, and we are striving for give me one number to tell me, is it good or is it bad?
There's not maybe, we have too much data.
Yeah, and there is, and I think it's impossible to just give one number.
Doesn't mean people will not try. Doesn't mean people will not try.
Yeah, of course. And they will always, land on the default, which is, of course, the turnover in the end, yes, and the possible income generated in the company. But I must say that this discussion was very interesting. It was very messy, just like the data-driven process. And I think this is a very good depiction of how it could look like. I encourage, anyway, all business owners that having a data-driven approach is a life-changing experience, and this is a way to actually really push your business forward. But the process is very messy, and this is not one afternoon, as I said before. Would you guys recommend it?
If you have to, but you have to. So
I
don't think we really have choice in, with this matter. Also with whole AI boom and everything, data got even more important layer or under layer to other stuff as well. So I don't think you have a choice, really, to be honest.
It's unavoidable. You are doing it today, even if you don't understand it, if you don't realize it. You are doing data-driven today. You simply be doing it suboptimally, or you're just wasting your resources.
With that said, I would like to thank you for today's discussion, and remember to follow Paulina, Jarek, and me on LinkedIn. That's the place where new episodes will be dropped. Also, we have a YouTube, me and Paulina. We also publish on Instagram. Thank you very much for today, and let's see the next Play and Deploy.